My name is Kira, I'm 40, and that evening I discovered that my husband had let another woman into our home at 2:17 a.m. If you've ever faced something like this, comment where you're reading from. The smell of burnt coffee still lingered in the kitchen when I opened the app for our entryway camera. A thin blue glow from the screen lit my hands, dry from dish soap. Outside, rain tapped the balcony rail like impatient fingers. I had checked the footage only because the lock had felt stiff that morning, as if turned too many times. The clip loaded slowly, pixel by pixel. Headlights flared across the tiles, bleaching the image white. Then came the distinct click of our lock. He entered first, coat unbuttoned, shoulders slouched, and behind him, she followed. Hair tied up, holding her shoes in one hand, careful not to make noise. I recognized her outline instantly, the same family friend who had laughed too brightly at our last barbecue, pressing a wine glass into his hand. I froze. The phone felt heavier than it should, slick against my palm. The timestamp glowed on the corner of the screen, 2 hours 17 minutes and 8 seconds. A number that seared itself into my mind. At first, I told myself I must be imagining it. Maybe she needed a ride. Maybe she just dropped something off. But the clip ran on, 23 seconds more. The door closed softly. They didn't come out again. I rewound, played it twice, 3 times, as if repetition might change the ending. Each click of the lock echoed in my chest louder than the rain outside. On the table beside me lay a chipped ceramic cup, still warm from my late tea. I gripped its handle, grounding myself in that ordinary weight. He had kissed me goodbye only hours earlier, heading to meet a client. He had even texted at 23:41, "Don't wait up." Now the truth sat in my hand, glowing, undeniable. I leaned back against the cold counter, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. My reflection on the black glass of the microwave looked like someone else's face, pale, drawn, unblinking. I didn't know yet that in 3 days, this recording would be the quiet weapon I used to turn the balance of our marriage, and our finances, completely upside down. The next morning, the kitchen felt like a stage set I no longer trusted. The tiled floor was cool under my bare feet. A line of sunlight caught the dust above the window, highlighting everything I had ignored. He came in at 7:12, still in the suit he'd worn the night before, tie loose, eyes bloodshot. He dropped his keys with a clatter onto the oak counter. The sound made me flinch. "You're up early," he muttered, heading straight for the fridge. He pulled out the carton of orange juice, drank straight from it, then left it half open on the table. The sour smell of yesterday's coffee grounds lingered from the sink. I studied him quietly. The phone with the camera app lay face down on the table, its weight pulling me forward like a magnet. I wanted to shove it under his nose. Instead, I asked, "Long client meeting?" "Yeah," he said without looking at me. He rubbed his forehead as though the conversation itself was an inconvenience. "They dragged it out. Got in late." The juice carton dripped onto the wood, a bright sticky circle spreading around the base. I reached for a napkin, slow and deliberate, pressing it down. He didn't notice. "What time did you get back?" I pressed, my voice even. He glanced up briefly. "Around midnight. Maybe a bit later." "Why?" The lie slid out so smoothly it almost felt rehearsed. Midnight. I had the timestamp burned into my mind, 2 hours 17 minutes and 8 seconds. The image of her shadow slipping inside. Bare feet on our hallway rug. I nodded, said nothing. I folded the wet napkin, tucked it neatly into the trash. My silence made him shift uncomfortably, but he masked it with a long drink of juice. The little things stacked in my head, the carton, the lie, the smell of his cologne faintly overlaid with something floral that wasn't mine. I traced the rim of my ceramic cup with one finger, grounding myself in the texture. That same chipped cup from the night before. I realized then, this was not an isolated slip. It was a pattern I had been too careful to ignore, too loyal to name. Inside, the first clear thought formed, I won't do this anymore. I didn't know the exact shape of my plan yet, but it began there, in that sticky orange ring on the oak counter. A small circle that would expand until it touched everything. The thing about betrayal is that it rarely begins with the big gestures. It creeps in through the corners, disguised as ordinary. Years ago, when we first moved into this apartment, 86 square meters on the 5th floor, with a balcony overlooking the tram line, he used to bring home flowers on Thursdays. Always a simple bundle of tulips wrapped in paper from the kiosk downstairs. I would set them in a glass jar, and we'd eat dinner on the balcony with the city hum rising below. I believed then that small kindnesses were permanent. But over time, the flowers stopped. What came instead were corrections. He didn't like how I folded towels. He rolled his eyes if I mispronounced a foreign name. At first, I let it pass. It felt easier to smooth over than to challenge. The turning point, though, came with money. 3 years ago, when my father passed, I received a modest inheritance, $72,000. Not life-changing, but enough to give us a cushion. We agreed it would stay in a separate account under my name. 2 months later, I discovered he had used $15,000 of it for a business investment with a coworker. He called it a misunderstanding, said he thought it was our money. I forgave, but I never forgot. What was at stake, I realized, wasn't just fidelity. It was control. My name on accounts, my say in decisions, my dignity in conversations. Piece by piece, it had been eroded under the guise of partnership. And still, I stayed. Because of the memories, because of the good stretches where he laughed with me over cheap wine, because of the way he could still surprise me with a joke at the exact right moment. I told myself everyone has flaws, that love was work. But sitting at the kitchen table after that night, watching the orange juice stain, I understood the ledger differently. The withdrawals from my trust far outweighed the deposits. What I tolerated had become the pattern. Now, the evidence wasn't vague impressions or half-remembered slights. It was tangible, a timestamp, a shadow on video, a lock turning at 2:17. It was undeniable. And what lay at stake was no longer just money or pride. It was the rest of my life. I pressed the phone against my palm until the corners dug in. The thought was sharp and final, this ends now. I sat at the dining table that evening with the phone in front of me like a loaded weapon. The footage was only 31 seconds long, yet it felt like a whole chapter collapsing. I replayed it, this time paying attention to every detail. The camera was mounted just above the entryway, angled slightly down. The image wavered in grainy blue-gray, the kind of light that made skin tones look ghostly. First frame, headlights sweep across the tiles. Second, his coat, slouched over his arm, his body leaning as though he carried not only her presence but also his guilt. Then her silhouette, quick, careful. She paused, tucked her shoes under her arm, hair tied up, coat unzipped. The sound was faint but captured, the metallic clink of keys, the mechanical turn of the lock, the soft click of the latch. Then nothing, just the muffled thud of the door closing. At the corner of the screen, the numbers glowed, September 6, 2025, 2 hours 17 minutes and 8 seconds. A timestamp, official and indifferent. I pressed pause and let the still frame freeze her face in the doorway. Half-lit, half-shadowed. She wasn't smiling, but her presence there was enough. I needed to hold this, not just digitally. So I tapped export. The file saved into my gallery with a new name, cam_060925_0217. I plugged the phone into my laptop, dragged the file to the desktop. Then I printed the first 3 frames, each one catching a progression, door opening, him stepping in, her following. The paper still warm from the printer, edges curling slightly. I laid them side by side on the table. They looked clinical, almost like evidence exhibits already prepared. One thought kept circling, he told me midnight. Midnight, when my phone clearly showed 2:17. The lie was no longer abstract. It was measurable. I scribbled on the back of one print with a black pen, "Don't wait up." 23:41. His text from that night. Placing it beside the stills made the contrast brutal. I whispered aloud, to the empty apartment. Here it is. Not rage, not tears. Just a clear, cold recognition. I stacked the prints carefully, slid them into a plain envelope, sealed it. My hands didn't shake. That was the moment. The inner click. The place where suspicion became fact, and fact demanded action. I made a choice: this wouldn't stay hidden on a screen. I would carry it, use it, leverage it. And once I did, there would be no return to silence. 2 days later, I carried the envelope across town in my tote bag. The weather had turned cooler, the wind tugging at my jacket as I walked up the steps to a low-rise office building on Karlovskaya Street. The brass plaque by the door read simply, Attorney at Law, Suite 203. Inside, the waiting room smelled faintly of lemon polish and old paper. A wall clock ticked heavily above a rack of case folders. When the secretary ushered me in, I met the lawyer, an older man with salt in his beard, glasses perched low. His desk was crowded with files, a mug of tea gone cold, and a brass letter opener shaped like a dagger. I laid the envelope on his desk without ceremony. I need you to confirm something, I said. He slid the prints out one by one, adjusted his glasses. The grainy stills looked harsher under the fluorescent light. He flipped them, read my note on the back, Don't wait up, 2341. Do you have the original file? He asked. I handed him my phone. He plugged it into his computer, clicked through with steady fingers. The video opened, the timestamp glowing. He watched in silence, then played it again. This is clean, he said finally. Metadata intact. Recorded by your device at the time stated. No edits. He tapped the screen. If needed, we can request the hosting company logs as secondary proof. His certainty steadied me. The air in the room felt cooler, easier to breathe. And if I wanted to use this? I asked. Then you need to decide where. Divorce court? Property division? At minimum, it shows deception. Combined with finances, it could shift asset distribution. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. What's your exposure right now? I told him about the inheritance, $72,000, the missing $15,000 already siphoned. His eyebrows rose. Do you have records? Yes, I said. Bank statements. Then you have more than just suspicion. You have a pattern. He pulled a calendar closer, flipped pages. File before the 20th if you want an injunction to freeze shared assets. That's 9 days. After that, transactions will be harder to contest. The number, 9, lodged in my mind. A deadline. I gathered the prints back into the envelope, slid it into my tote. My heart beat evenly, like a drum marking time. As I left his office, the lemon scent clung to my coat. The city noise outside rushed back in, but the silence of his confirmation stayed with me. Now it wasn't just betrayal in the dark. It was evidence in daylight. And I had 9 days to act. The following Monday, at 9:45, I walked into the district courthouse. The marble floor was cold under my shoes, echoing each step like a verdict. In my tote, the envelope with stills, the USB drive with the clip, and my bank statements clipped together with a brass binder. The clerk behind the glass partition spoke briskly, sliding forms toward me. Temporary injunction. Property and financial assets. Fill sections 3 through 6. Her nails tapped the counter as she pointed. I wrote carefully, each number deliberate, the joint account, ending in 4821, the savings account, ending in 7734, the date of the suspicious withdrawal, March 14, $15,000. My handwriting looked steadier than I felt. Once filed, the papers were stamped in red, Case NO. 2025 to 3174. A number that transformed my quiet suspicion into a matter of record. The lawyer met me outside the clerk's office. That's it, he said. By statute, assets are frozen pending review. He won't be able to move large sums without notice. He'll find out within 48 hours. The words felt like a cord tightening, not around me, but around him. That evening, at 19:06, he came home to a letter slipped under the door. He picked it up, tore it open without sitting down. I watched from the hallway, leaning against the cool plaster wall. His eyes darted across the page once, twice. Then his face strained. He dropped into the nearest chair, the paper limp in his hands. "What is this?" His voice cracked between anger and disbelief. "An injunction," I said simply. He stared at me, waiting for more. I didn't move. "You," his jaw worked soundlessly for a moment. "You froze our accounts?" "Our accounts," I corrected, my tone even. "The money includes mine. My inheritance. My name. You won't touch another dollar without oversight." Silence spread between us, thick as wet wool. The only sound was the hum of the radiator and the faint drip of a tap in the kitchen. He folded the paper once, then again, as if smaller pieces would lessen its weight. But the red case number still blazed at the top, unignorable. That was the quiet shock, not shouting, not denial. Just the realization that his grip had slipped, that control was no longer his alone. I went to the kitchen, picked up the chipped ceramic cup, and filled it with water. My hand didn't shake as I drank. The balance had shifted. The consequences arrived quickly, not like thunder but like slow, steady rain. On Tuesday morning, the joint account app showed a new banner in red, "Funds restricted, court hold." He discovered it at the same time I did. He was standing by the counter, phone in hand, jaw clenched. He tapped the screen again and again, as though repetition could force the numbers to move. "What did you do?" he muttered, though he already knew. He slammed the phone down, the case cracking at one corner. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and paid the utilities directly from my separate account, $126 for electricity, $89 for water. My own name on the transfers felt like oxygen after months of holding my breath. That evening, he hovered by the fridge, restless. "How do you expect me to manage expenses? Groceries? Car payments?" "I expect you to be transparent," I said, my voice level. "If you need something, we discuss it. No more hidden transfers. No more disappearing sums." The chipped ceramic cup was warm in my hands again, filled with chamomile tea. Its familiar weight steadied me. Later in the week, the lawyer called with an update. The injunction had been processed fully, and any movement above $500 would flag directly to the court. His tone carried a note of approval. "That's leverage. Use it carefully." By Thursday, my mother came by. She stood in the hallway, hands wrapped around a folded grocery receipt. "He asked me to lend him cash," she said softly. "Said you had locked him out." I nodded. "It's temporary." "But no, don't give him anything." She looked at me for a long moment, then tucked the receipt back into her coat. "I won't." It was the first time in years she didn't suggest patience or compromise. That felt like a small, sharp victory. The atmosphere in the apartment changed. He moved quieter, no longer tossing keys, no longer leaving cartons open on the counter. He cooked once, pasta at 2200 hours, but washed every dish afterward, as if trying to prove something without words. But the silence between us wasn't reconciliation. It was recalibration. He was learning the limits. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking to check the door. A small win, yes. But only the beginning. It was Friday evening when the second piece of truth landed in my lap. I was cleaning out a drawer in the hallway when I found a folded receipt wedged beneath a stack of old flyers. The paper was smudged, but the numbers were clear. Hotel Aurelia, Room 214, September 6, 2:46 a.m., $178. The timestamp sat like a twin beside my camera footage, 2:17 at our door, 2:46 billed at a hotel less than a mile away. My throat tightened, not from surprise but from confirmation. What I had suspected was now double-stitched in ink. I placed the receipt in the same envelope as the printed stills, the weight of evidence growing heavier but also steadier. That night, he tried his countermove. He came into the living room at 21:15, holding his phone like a shield. "You've made a mistake," he said. "That woman you think you saw, she just needed to grab a book she left here." Nothing happened. I didn't answer. I reached for the envelope on the coffee table, slid the hotel slip across to him. The paper rasped against the wood. His face froze. He didn't touch it. "Room 214, I said quietly. My voice didn't rise. 2:46 a.m. The same night. He looked down, then up, then back down again, words stalling in his throat. Finally, he pushed back from the table, pacing toward the window. "You've been digging through my things," he accused, though his voice was thin. "No," I said. "Your lies leave their own trail." The silence stretched, filled only by the faint hum of traffic outside. I picked up the chipped ceramic cup, turned it slowly in my hands, the glaze cool under my fingers. "You can try to explain, or you can accept what's on paper," I added. "Either way, the facts don't change." He didn't answer. He stood at the window with his back to me, shoulders rigid, breathing uneven. And in that pause, clarity settled like calm water after a storm. There was no way back to ignorance. No appeal to trust that could cover stamped dates and numbered rooms. I knew then, the last thread had snapped. Now the apartment feels different. Not haunted, not hostile, just mine again. I moved his things into the spare room 3 weeks ago. His suits hang in the narrow wardrobe, his shoes lined against the far wall. The bedroom smells of lavender from the sachet I tucked into my own drawer, not his cologne. At night, I sleep without waiting for the sound of a key in the door. The injunction still stands, and the court date is set for December 14th. Until then, every transaction above $500 pings directly to my lawyer's inbox. He tried once to push through a transfer for the car, $1,200, and it was blocked before it cleared. He hasn't tried again. I pay my own bills directly now. Electricity, water, groceries, all in my name. The numbers aren't large, but they're clean. Every receipt folded into a neat file on my desk, a record that no one can dispute. Our conversations are short. Functional. Milk's in the fridge. Lawyer called. Court date confirmed. That is all. The silence between us is no longer tension, it is boundary. Last Sunday, my sister came by. We sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea from the same chipped ceramic cups I refused to throw away. She asked, "Are you sure you're okay?" I looked at the envelope on the shelf, still sealed, holding the prints and the receipt. "Yes," I said. "Because I know exactly where I stand now. My plan for the next months is simple. I keep the case steady, I protect what's mine, and I rebuild the habits he eroded. Walks before work. Dinner with friends without excuses. A savings account under my name alone. I don't imagine revenge or dramatic scenes. I don't need them. What I need, and what I have, is space to breathe without permission." This morning, I opened the balcony door at 7:30. The air was sharp with the first bite of autumn, trams screeching below, the sky streaked pale pink. I held my cup of tea in both hands and let the steam rise against my face. In this moment, I am not waiting for anyone to come home. I am not afraid of what I'll find on a screen at 2 in the morning. I am here, present, steady. And that is enough.